Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to uh, have this webinar in teaching VR process, the first two steps of the VR process, outreach and referral, and orientation and intake. My name is Jamie Emanuel. I'm with AverTac. We're at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'd like to introduce my co-presenters, Suzanne Malson and Wayne Daigle. And I know you know these guys. Hold on just a second. Sorry, I lost my screen for just a second. We're just going to cover these first two steps. This is a tool that we've been developing and wanted to roll out to the programs, and just wanted to share this information with you via virtual training. So I'm going to turn this over to Suzanne, and she's going to go over our learning objectives.
Thank you, Jamie. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. At the completion of our webinar today, we have 3 learning objectives or outcomes. Participants will learn how to promote awareness and understanding of the AVERS program services. Learning of outcome 2, participants will learn the importance of establishing a strong referral process. And learning outcome 3, participants will learn the steps required of orientation and intake. So they're very concise and brief, but there's a lot of information. I'd like to now turn it over to my co-host and colleague, Wayne Daigle.
Good morning, everyone. As Jamie and Suzanne pointed out, this is a tool that we've been developing for quite a while, understanding that the VR process is the backbone of the AVERS programs and everything that we do. So we wanted to do some hands-on tools for new counselors, experienced counselors that just want to brush up, or directors that are training new staff to give them some tools to utilize in developing this process and making sure that it's implemented correctly. So we're going to start today with step 1, which is outreach and referral. So in developing this tool, we talked to a lot of people, and there's been, I don't know, I would say at least a month's long conversation about what we put into each step. And lumping outreach and referral together made the most sense to us, because without referral and outreach, we don't have that client base. We don't have that information getting out to the people. We don't have that ability to provide that education to the different programs and tribal entities that we work with. So outreach is the initial step. We get out and develop those plans and become proactive in our communities, setting up, vending booths at community events, those types of things, just to get the education out there and to get our name out there into our communities. Some of the goals of outreach include educating our potential consumers. There's a lot of stigma still associated with disabilities, in a lot of our communities. We don't talk about that. We don't identify disabilities. It's just a physical or mental issue that person has, and there's really not even a name for it in a lot of our languages. So we want to educate our consumers, letting them know that it's not something bad or something that's going to set them apart. We want to increase our community awareness. A lot of the programs that we work with don't recognize what we can do. They see us as just an opportunity for additional funding, and they'll refer people over to meet their criteria instead of looking at what we can provide. They just use us as a criteria stepping stone for their services. So we want to increase that community awareness and get our name out there and help people understand what we are doing and how we're doing the VR process. It also allows us to connect with potential employers and develop that network. We have a limited source of employers when we look at a lot of our reservations, and so it's not it doesn't appear to be that crucial to do this step, but it's very crucial to get to know who's hiring, who's the HR person, what's the requirements of the tribe. Can you work with the tribal requirements to meet their needs? So it's really important that we connect with those potential employers and develop that network of employers. Establish partnerships and community relationships and support. So one of the greatest things, or greatest examples of this step is when we look at like Disability Awareness Week or Disability Awareness Fairs, when we're working with our people in our communities, and the other tribal agencies are able to participate and create this awareness across all aspects of the service providers. It's really impactful and powerful. So as we go through this, watch in the chat box, because John's going to put some links up to get to forms and tools and examples that we've created. And here's just a list of some of the examples and suggestions that we have in our folder. We're going to be sharing that with you today. So we aren't live yet on the internet or on the website with this, but we will have this information on the website in a very short time. And so these examples are all included in the tools and products sections of our website. So here's a nice little tool for outreach that you can utilize. And again, this is included, and it just kind of helps you go step by step in creating that outreach plan. I always like to include the entire staff. I don't just have certain people doing it, because then it creates that buy-in from all my staff, and it becomes a stronger approach to the community. So referral. And as I'm going through this, I know I'm talking kind of fast because we want a limited time, and we want to get your guys' voice in this call also. If you have questions, please put it in the chat box, holler at one of us to interrupt me and ask your questions. So referral. A referral is just a request or a referral. I don't know any other word for it. You can make it by yourself. You can come into the office and do it yourself. You can have a family member say, hey, why don't you go talk to Voc Rehab? A lot of times we have IHS doing referrals, behavioral health doing referrals. A lot of our treatment facilities will do referrals. So it just isn't us going out and asking people to come to us. It allows that opportunity for the community to also send people to us. And so that's how outreach and referral really come together. If you have the community presence and the knowledge in the community, that allows that referral to take place.
The
goal, I wanted to reiterate that too. Sorry. Sorry, we all started talking at once. I wanted to reiterate too, and we really discussed this a lot amongst ourselves at the office, and we talked about outreach and how important outreach is to the referral process. So educating the community, potential referrers, and potential consumers, I think we'll find that once we spend more time focusing on outreach to the community, then we'll see that our quality of referrals will increase.
And one of the good things about a referral form is that you have some contact information. Many of us have experienced somebody just coming in and asking questions and just doing a verbal information seeking interview. But by having a referral form without getting an application, which once an application is signed, you know the countdown starts. But if you have a referral form, you can put the referral form in your data system, and you have a way of doing follow-up. This is really important because it doesn't drop people out. You know, we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to those people that are interested and who may really benefit from the VR services. It's all yours. Wayne?
And to build off of what Suzanne and Jamie are saying, is it's also important for data collection when it comes to reporting to RSA, writing the next grant application. It gives you a really good idea of the numbers of people that are being reached or interested in the program. Some of the referrals aren't always appropriate. That's okay. We still have to count those numbers of people that are seeking our services or information about our services. So that's important when we're looking at the data collection side of it. So, the goal is to assist individuals to begin the process of assessing VR services. That's the whole point of a referral, is to get people in the door. They can sit down with us. We can start having a discussion about what steps are next, and if they're interested in doing that process with us. So part of the discussion we had in breaking out outreach, referral, and orientation and intake was what really fit together and what don't fit together, and how they don't. And I feel that step one and step two in the VR process, which is outreach and referral and orientation intake, are just kind of a glob mess, in my opinion. They all mix together, and it's our jobs to kind of separate out what pieces go where. We can't have applications and intakes without outreach and referral. We got to get the information out to the people, get them coming into us. And then part of the orientation part is just like onboarding new staff. So we have to have that orientation component to come in and help them learn the steps to do the intake. And so that's why these two steps are together in this presentation, and why they are, in my opinion, one of the first things that need to be done. So here we have some examples again, and again, we're going to share a link to let you see these examples and tools, and you can utilize all these. I think they're being created in a fashion to where you can pull them out off the website, put your logo and your title in there, and make it individualized for your program, and utilize these examples as well. And so now we're at the checklist. So this is, again, the steps that we found that would help you create that checklist or that referral form and get that document out there, make sure the information is shared. And now I'm going to hand off the PowerPoint and the speaking mic to Jamie.
Thank you, Wayne. I think you're going to have to click through. Oh, okay. I'll share my PowerPoint. Hold on just a second. Uh-oh, I can't share.
I might be able to. Hold on.
Okay.
Are you able to see mine?
Yes, I do. You may want to do the slideshow version. There you go. So the second step of the VR process, the orientation and intake. And as Wayne said earlier, the first step, outreach and referral, once you complete that and then move on into the second step, orientation and intake, you're setting the groundwork for receiving quality referrals, appropriate referrals, and hopefully the opportunity to serve individuals who do meet all of the criteria and qualifications for VR services. Orientation is done differently. Some individual offices have group orientation. I've worked in other offices that only do individual orientation, one-on-one. So depending on your program and what works best for your community and your potential consumers, you may decide to either do one or the other, or you may do both. But the important thing to remember is that during the orientation process, the consumers are learning about your program. They're learning about AVERS services. They're learning about your policy and procedures, the practices that you have for your particular program. We know that programs are not cookie cutter, and what works for one program may not necessarily work for another program. And we have to remember that the cultural aspect of our services and our consumers is so important to each different community. So that is why it's important for you to create your own orientation process, and to also include that in your policies and procedures, so that you have a regular process that is continually done day in and day out. Consumers have guidelines, regulations, rules to go by, and they actually understand how the process works. So at that time during your orientation session, if you have group or individual, you know, the consumer at that time decides, you know, do they want to proceed? I mean, myself personally, I've had orientation meetings, and at that time the consumer said, you know, that's not for me. I came here to get some free hearing aids and glasses, and I had no intention to go to work. And so at that time, you know, the understanding is they are not going to be able to receive services from your program. So these are very important things that we discuss during orientation. And it's important for each AVERS program to establish their own system, you know, just as we said in this slide, either a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, or individual orientation sessions. I don't have control of the PowerPoint, Suzanne.
I changed it. Which one do you want? Is this one not good? Is there another one?
There you go. This is correct. This is the next slide. Also during orientation, informed choice is something that we must provide to consumers to give them the opportunity to actively participate, make meaningful and informed choices throughout the AVERS process. And so some of the things that we include during the informed choice piece is evaluation and assessment, the services that may be needed, and the providers that we have available. Also development of their vocational goals and responsibilities. We discuss employment, the services needed to complete plans for employment, and also services, providers, and methods used to provide those services. So consumers, you know, informed choice is a very important piece in that orientation process. And some programs may wish to discuss informed choice once the intake process has taken place. But myself personally, I feel like informed choice should be included in the orientation piece.
Okay, so step 2 here, the VR process, is the intake part. And as we're going through the referral application and orientation, we're presenting the program, we're gaining some information from the applicant, and the intake part is so significant. Because this is where you really start building a strong relationship with the applicant, where trust starts to take place. Information you're providing is accurate. You're observing the applicant is observing you, and they're listening. And we need to make sure that we're presenting information not on just one level or one time. And that's why you're going through all these different steps. It takes time to build a relationship, and this is a complex program. You want to make sure that that applicant is getting really good information. So you're finding out, you might be gathering, you're going to be gathering medical information, psychological information. information. What happened in their school years? Are they a former student that receives services, transition services, or um, so again, you're gathering everything that you possibly can. And as you're gathering this information and taking important notes, these are some of the things that you're learning in terms of the down the road steps of when you're going to be building your individualized plan of employment with the program that may become a consumer once you, after orientation, you invite the intake, you invite them to, do you want to be part of the program? Remember that respect goes a very long way in this process. Jamie mentioned the cultural piece of this. Um, don't forget to take care of all those things. Make sure that you've gathered all the information that you need to gather, and be sure that you're giving all the information about the programs, and leave time for questions, and invite family to be part of the intake or any other part of the process. And this is the orientation and intake document that Jamie worked very hard at. She's shared it with the rest of us to help put our 2 cents worth in, but she's the gal that's been really working hard on this. So what this is, I think that the tools that are being provided, that will be provided online to you in some near future, and that you will have because you're participants of this webinar, is that it gives you something tangible that you can look at, so that you're not going to forget something. So it's all that, the parts, the roles, what services that we'll be providing, and the confidentiality of information is extremely important. The rights and responsibility of the applicant and the ABERS programs. So each the program and the applicant and then consumer, we have their rights, and we need to make sure that it's explained sufficiently so that there aren't any questions. And then, of course, the client assistance program that needs to be presented at least 3 times, and probably more to an applicant and then consumer. And then the relationship between the state and the VR. And if you're having challenges with the state, or your applicant is saying, no, I don't want anything to do with the state, how can you bridge that gap so that there isn't that barrier between the state and the tribe that is creating this non-trust, which is something that's very real, and has a right to be there. Trust has been denied over time, but it's our responsibility to make sure that we're setting a good example, and that we're trying to give a person the opportunity to be the best they can be. So, and here we are. So what would be the next step after the intake process? What are we looking at? We're looking at inviting an applicant to be a consumer. So I leave it to Wayne and Jamie now to come in, and maybe we want to, if we don't have anything to add to that part, this might be the time that we want to open the microphones so that we can hear from the audience. Is there something particular that you're looking for? Is there something that we've left out of our presentations that, have we created a comfort zone for you in terms of process, and are you ready to, take on something? So I turn it over to Wayne, Jamie, and the audience. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate that. And Wayne as well. I think that I'd like to go back to slide 8. And if you want to unshare, Suzanne, I'll share my screen, and we can have some discussion on the first step.
Let me find it first.
So Well, Suzanne and Jamie, get to that slide. I want to jump in here real quick and say that we're gonna open this up. We wanted to do an open mic type situation. We want to hear how you guys are doing outreach, how you guys are handling your referrals and your orientation and your intakes. What process do you guys follow? How do you follow it? All those fun things. So please, let's unmute our stuff and start chatting. That's the biggest thing, is we want you guys to engage with us. And that's the hardest part with this new virtual
Absolutely.
stuff. Yeah, it's so hard. You know, you sit here on virtual and you look at yourself talk for an hour, it sucks. So I want to encourage you guys to get on here, and I'm sure it can be intimidating at first, but if you want to say something, let us know. We'll help you get there. Go ahead, Jamie.
Okay, I'm still trying to share my screen, but it says the host has disabled me from sharing. So I know there's a box somewhere I can click to share.
Winona, can you bring Jamie on as a co-host? Because you're listed as a host right now.
Casey was trying to say something. Casey, do you want to try your microphone again? There you go. Looks like we're ready.
Okay, got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So for Project Visions, what we do for outreach is we try to go to every community event that they have.
We have a domestic violence parade every October. We have a career fair every spring.
Things like that we try to go to just so we're out there. And we usually bring our state counterparts with us. So they're also there right next to us. So people have gotten used to her. We've had the same counselor for the last probably 6 or 7 years from the state. So they've gotten used to her. So the trust has really been built. We recently changed our referral process. So we used to just take applications, leave them in our lobby, and people would return them. But we found that we would lose a lot of people between application and IPE signing. We would just make them eligible and then never see them again. So I created a referral form. So we leave that in our lobby now. So then when we get a referral, we just call them, they come in, we do the application with them. And then we also added a program orientation. So in between application and eligibility, while we wait for those records to come back, we do an orientation. And then we really get an idea of what their employment goal is. So we have a couple of assessments we have them do, like basic just interest tests. We do have a work values test we just added. So then we have a pretty good idea of where they're at, where we get to the employment goal section. So that's what we've been working on lately.
That sounds great. Thank you so very much for sharing, Casey. Jacqueline John, hello, how are you? Did you want to share something about your process in your community?
Hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. So right now I'm in the process of trying to, oops, is everybody there still?
Yep, we're here.
So right now I'm in the process of trying to rewrite the whole intake and the orientation process. But we were actually trying to work on the steps prior to this COVID experience. So we do have, we now have 2 counselors, and we also have, we're supposed to have intake. So like, I'm a little confused as to who should be doing like the intake part of it, because we have an intake worker. Like, what is actually her job? I don't really know at this point, because like I was having intake just, you know, meet with them, gather the documentation, start the standardized letters for the health, you know, for whatever disability issues. And then they would direct the person to the VR counselor. So now with watching this, I'm thinking that maybe we shouldn't be doing that. We should be backing it up and doing it a little bit different. So I mean, it's in the process of being redone, but I was hoping to get some ideas from
You know, Jacqueline, that's a great process it's going through. And you know, it's really true. You try something out and it's not quite working. One of the things that I found when I was director and DR counselor, is that the VR counselor, this is the opportunity for the VR counselor and the applicant to start building trust and getting to know each other. And that intake talks about so many of the personal things in terms of, you know, discrimination because of a disability or you know, being a person of color or any of those different things. And so just, you know, having somebody that they can, it's telling the story, very confidential information and very, in some cases, embarrassing situations. And if it's told, to someone, and that someone isn't the VR counselor, and that has to be repeated again, this creates anxiety, and it creates it creates this up and down feeling where I'm not really being passed along, and we kind of look like the mistake instead of being more closely sensitive. So that's my opinion, but it's something you have to figure out, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So with me, it was a little different approach when it comes to the orientation, and I used it as a group orientation. We had really low numbers. I mean, when I came in as director at one point, there was only 5 people in the program. So we had to boost those numbers up, and we used orientation as a community meeting, and we'd bring in once a week. We picked a day, and we'd bring in this group of referrals, and we'd upfront tell them that we couldn't guarantee confidentiality because we were in a group setting. We asked them not to share their personal information unless they felt they wanted to. And then from there, we provided them the orientation PowerPoint and provided them that information. At the end of orientation, those individuals that were appropriate referrals would get signed up right away for an appointment, for an intake appointment with a VR counselor. So it really allowed us to manage our flow of consumers. And then when it went the other direction and we had an overflow of consumers, we were able to drop back and do the individual orientation intake appointments, which were scheduled for an hour and a half with our VR counselors. So we used it as a management tool for our numbers as well.
Meredith, do you want to share? Meredith Van Winkle, you were sharing on the chat. You're from Hopi, and I really liked what you were saying. Can you share it with us, Meredith?
Yes, good morning. I have kids in the background, so if everybody hears that, excuse that. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, here at Hopi, initially, before I came on board, they had the VR tech do the orientation and intake process. But when I started doing my counseling, I noticed I was repeating exactly what you were saying, Susan. And so now we've come up with a PowerPoint. We've developed a orientation alone, individually, and we completed a checklist. And they signed the checklist. We provided all the information that you provided on your PowerPoint just a while ago. And informed choice, CAP, they sign it, date it, and if they choose to come back the next process, which is intake, the VR counselor would again continue that process. And again, we have another checklist to go by and possible checklist to complete. Then they sign it and then we move forward. Sorry for the noise.
Thank you, Meredith. I want to thank you, Meredith, for that.
Great. Jackie, didn't cut you off.
Thank you for that information, Meredith. No problem. I was just curious. I wanted to ask everyone, all the participants today, what's your time frame when you receive a referral? What do you have a specific time frame that you respond to that referral? Do you track that referral when you receive it and you follow up within a certain amount of time? I'd like to hear from from you all what your time frame is on responding to referrals.
For Project Visions, we respond to ours usually the same day we get it. It has to be within 30 days for us, otherwise.
Otherwise what? Casey, you said otherwise.
Oh, well. We just use the referral form that's available for our TVR software. So we just do every 30 days. What we do is when we get a referral, we call them as soon as we get it, whichever one gets it, because usually the two counselors get it because we're closest to the door. So we will call, make an appointment. Both of the counselors meet with the client, so there is no repeat of information. And then that's when they get assigned to somebody. And if they don't make that appointment, we keep them on file for 30 days. And then we close them out after that.
Good. That sounds really good.
And for us, we have the 477 program that works out of the same building that we're in. And so they do, when somebody does a walk-in, they come in and they do created a pre-screen checklist to see whether or not they, to ask questions about the disability. If they answer yes to all the questions, then they stop right there. They call the intake worker, and then she will fill out the consumer referral form, and she will obtain whatever kind of IDs or anything, and then she will set up an appointment within 5 days of that receipt of that referral. And then the meeting has to be scheduled within that first 5 days with her.
Jacqueline. I saw Lee.
And that's so important, Jacqueline.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Jamie.
That's really important, Jacqueline, that you have a process, that you have a tech, a VR tech, or someone that is the designated point for receiving the referral application or receiving it over the phone. You know, we get a lot of phone referrals and then drop off of referral applications as well. So the fact that you've established a point of contact to receive that referral, and you already have established a process of this person receives the referral, there's a distribution process of who receives what to follow up. So that's very important that you do have a designated individual in your office that is the point of contact for referrals, and that there is a process for them to distribute the referrals to the counselor or the tech that is handling the scheduling of the orientation.
Amanda, did you want to share? You wrote something in the chat. There you go.
Hi, yes. So TCC overall has a policy to return all phone calls within 24 hours. So if it's a self-referral or a health aide or behavioral health staff or a 477 program, we respond to them accordingly, and then do sort of a informal intake over the phone, and then once we get more information from that person, we'll mail out or email or fax the application to the village or wherever it needs to go. We do find that some folks are applying because they were told to apply, and so we'll send the application out, and then sometimes we never get it back. Other times we and we don't really track them after, if they don't send back that application within 30 or so days. We might give them a reminder phone call, and if they continue to be non-responsive, we move on.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Lee, did you want to say something? I saw your name light up there a little bit ago, and then Rachel, and then maybe Paula. Lee? He might be talking. Rachel, did you want to say something while Lee's trying to find how to unmute? Okay, what about you, Paula?
All right.
This is Paula. I was trying to make a comment earlier and I think I got kicked off. Somebody made the comment of, I'm not sure what the intake worker's role would be. And again, I think maybe it was already discussed by the time I got back on, but we have rehab technician positions. And I was just gonna comment that every staff member within the VR program, the consumers and the applicants have to build that trust with all of them. The person at the front desk has to know enough about your program purposes, about eligibility to be able to explain it and in the language that you serve as well. And so to be developing those relationships of trust starts when the individuals come through the door, no matter who they see, because your program has to maintain that integrity of confidentiality. If the counselor tells them, about confidentiality and consumer informed choice, and then the rehab technicians are not following through, then that's a real problem. So I would utilize your intake worker very similar to how the rehab technician positions are in our rehab techs also do the initial intake. They help with the initial interview. And so gathering all documentation to determine eligibility is one of their major roles, keeping that communication, inputting data into the data system. So I'll let somebody else talk now, but I just wanted to make those comments of having applicants trust your program, having referral agencies trust your program to refer, because your program needs to maintain that integrity. Otherwise, you'll not be receiving very many referrals and you'll be getting some complaints.
Excellent, thank you.
So it was in listening to this conversation, we talked a lot about referral and intake. What about outreach? I want to expand that out to the outreach, because I think from what I've seen, a lot of times outreach is kind of the forgotten step. If we could have you guys jump in today and just give us a quick discussion about your outreach plan. If you have one, some of the things that you do in doing that, that'd be great.
Wayne, this is Joanna with the Nez Perce Tribe.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi, how are you folks? Our outreach, what we found is we've had more success holding an outreach community awareness during the day to hit the people in our community that are not working. So when we've tried to move them into the evenings where we thought we would get more, I was telling my staff it's not going to work because you have families, single parents with children that have to be home with children in the evening, after school, after Head Start. So we pretty much know now to set them up during the day for outreach.
Okay, thank you.
I shared Wayne's list of examples for outreach activities. And all of these examples are available in the link that we provided you in the chat box. There's a download link to download all of these examples. And I'd like to turn it back over to Wayne to discuss some of these examples because he did produce a lot of this material.
So, and I'm gonna pass on the buck here, and I'm gonna pass it on to the participants. I want to hear what you guys have done in these examples. I mean, are you meeting at your disability awareness fairs? Are you setting up I did a fry bread sell. We had a food booth that we set up as part of our outreach. So we had people cooking fry bread, and then we had some Indian tacos and that type of thing. And as they were ordering, I was bombarding them with program information. So I kind of held their food hostage to get them to pay attention to what I was doing. So what do we got? Rachel Allen in the chat box says some of our outreach includes job fairs, health fairs, disability awareness fairs, brochures and tribal health clinics, tribal complexes, and then several coalition meetings. Amanda saying that you created a a flyer with TCC Communications, did a mass mailing, clinics, school principals with applications and brochures. Amanda also states that we attend health fairs, transition camps, and career fairs. We've called into the local native radio station also. So please, guys, jump in here. Oh, hey, Paula, thank you.
Hey, Wayne, you can always call me. Yeah.
I like Paula's talking a lot.
This is Paula. I think that outreach really needs to be intentional, because I know with our tribe, you have to get approval for travel to here and there. You can't just, jump in a vehicle and go. And so we have our counselors do outreach plans for the month. So are they hitting the schools? Have they done a presentation to the schools? Have they gone out with the community health representatives, the CHRs? Is there a health fair that's our job fair, health fair, those types of things? So we have them develop this and update every month, because they have to request for travel to do that. But we do very similar, outreach at our chapter houses, at the hospitals. We contact the spinal cord clinic, for instance, in Chinle, the eye physicians in different clinics. They have individuals with low vision, and we work with our state partners to serve those individuals. So my main point is we do some similar things, but my main point is I think it needs to be intentional, where outreach plans have to be developed, and counselors and rehab technicians following through with those outreach plans.
Thank you,
Paula. That's wonderful. And I see also that Alan said in the chat box that they include a lot of information in their tribal newsletter, which is a great resource for getting information out to the community. And I'd also like to comment on Casey's information during COVID-19, stating that they're meeting via Zoom with other departments, other agencies to talk about their services. So that's really wonderful to hear that outreach is taking place even during the pandemic. Programs are using other resources to continually keep that information out to the community.
Does anybody have any questions on how to develop outreach plans or anything like that? Oh, Karen posted that they've done resource fairs at prisons as well. Thank you. That's the reentry is a big topic that a lot of us are faced with in our service areas. So it's always good to have that information out. So in Montana, we had one circulating around at the Montana prison. That had a flyer that said, if you go to Volk Rehab, they give you $500 cash, which was awesome. When they show up at your door and say, can I get my check?
I'm looking at the chat box. Karen was talking about the prison outreach that they're doing with their program, which is really thinking outside the box. And as Wayne said, reentry is an area for potential referrals that I think some programs are focusing on that area, but I'm not sure all programs are. But that's very important, just as Wayne said, that this area of referrals is something that may be challenging, but then again, I think there's also great results that come from working with reentry consumers.
Karen, would you mind sharing a little bit more other than in the chat box? Are you up for a little bit of dialogue?
Oh, sure. I work with the St. Croix tribe primarily in Wisconsin and closely with reintegration. And I also work with recovery. They don't have that department right now, but working with people coming out of rehab facilities and also halfway houses And one of my coworkers, Diane, she works closely with the Ho-Chunk Tribal Court. So we're trying to kind of breach that barrier. And yeah, it's hard because you've got people who are coming out that are completely unstable. But if we're building the rapport before they get out, and like they can email us, I can email them back. You know, we can send them information about our program. You know, we can talk about what resources they might have available to them when they get out. And we can talk about it in a way that they're not going to get it from their case manager in prison. And this goes, of course, for veterans too, because we're also trying to do more outreach with veteran groups. Now, one of the resources that may or may not be available to everybody is services for independent living. They also are mandated to do reintegration. They don't have programs everywhere, but they are mandated. So if that is a resource that you can collaborate with, it can make a lot of difference to the services available for that person when they first leave incarceration.
Right, thank you, Karen. That's great information. Do you have in your community, do you have a house that somebody can come to, or do they just come back into the community and live in the same household that they lived in prior to their arrest?
Unfortunately, most often, unless they're able to get into a halfway house, and we're a very, rural area, so there's not a lot of choices. Right now, I've got someone who's going to come out and live with grandma, but I don't know, given where we are with this virus, if that's going to be something he's actually going to be able to do, because he's coming from a facility where, at this point, I don't think the virus is active, but coming into the tribal community might be very dangerous for them. And so there might have to be some other alternatives for him. But they are aware that going back into the community where they got into trouble might be an issue. So one of my consumers is really working hard at actually developing a small business around that process of ceremony and change. And so I'm hoping that he was incarcerated for 17 years. And he's pretty phenomenal. So I'm really hoping that we'll be able to do some good work.
Oh, Karen, that sounds wonderful. That's encouraging. That's really horrible. Thank you so much. Good work. Keep up the good work there.
Yes, thank you, Karen.
And
I'd like to ask Meredith. Sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to reach out to Kim because I see she's online. Kim, since we're actually in the outreach offices, we're in the satellite offices, and Kim is in the actual Lac du Flambeau office. So the outreach process when you're in a satellite office is really different from when you're in a stationary position. Just by what we do in outreach in the satellite offices, everything we do is kind of about outreach. It's very, very different from working from a single location, I think.
Thank you, Karen. Beautiful.
This is Kim. Thanks, Karen. Actually, our outreach is very similar to our satellite offices. We hit all our health fairs, community fairs, job fairs. We try to hit every powwow, even on weekends, we go to things. The problem now is everything has been canceled for the next 4 months. There will be nothing going on in Wisconsin for us. And I'm sure a lot of that is going on for everybody. So right now it's going to be, we're going to hopefully get onto our local, the tribal newsletters. Some of our offices are already, but not like mine. And then we're going to just try to keep shooting out emails to different departments once the tribe starts opening up again, which is in a couple weeks. The state tribes are going to open up in a couple weeks. So that's kind of how we're going to have to change our outreach now. That's kind of it.
That's important to recognize that that we are in a place of change, and how can we be more responsive to our community and make the changes that we need Before I turn it over to Jamie, I know Jamie wanted to ask something, but I wanted to know, is there any of you that have any kind of a safe house or something that when somebody comes back into the community from either prison or went blank, that they have a place to come to?
We do at Hannahville.
Okay.
We have 3 fire supportive housing. It's a 13 single occupant apartment complex, and we have that available for people who want clean and sober living. So it's open to anyone over the age of 18 in our community. And so we get a lot of people that come out of prison, jail, psychiatric hold, substance abuse, and then they can stay there and transition into normal housing.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Jamie, I just wanted to find out if there was anybody else out there that was fortunate enough to have something like that. Did you want to take over here, Jamie?
Sure. Sure. I was kicked out and I had to come back in, and I lost all of the previous comments that were in the chat box. Winona had said earlier during the COVID-19, she had some ideas about videos that some of the programs had developed for outreach. And I wanted to ask her if she wanted to share some of that information with us. And I also wanted to ask Meredith, she had given a previous comment in regards to culturally appropriate outreach. So if Winona would like to speak on COVID-19 outreach possibilities, and if Meredith would like to speak on culturally appropriate outreach.
Okay, so I made a question in the chat box, but I don't know how many of you are on Facebook, but Spirit Lake Vocational Rehabilitation in North Dakota, they have been doing a pretty good job about using their program Facebook page to get information out there. In particular, they put out an orientation video. It's more of like a PowerPoint slide, but it gets the message out there, and they have a narrator. And I think that you can have fun with it. You can be creative with it. Several years ago, 3 affiliated tribes also of North Dakota created an orientation video that was very, very beautiful. And so it's a free way of getting information out there. And so I was just interested if anyone wanted a tutorial on it, because John and I were thinking about planning just a short little webinar on how you can create a orientation video about your program and put it up on YouTube. And it's on your website, it's on your Facebook page, or you can just share the YouTube link. So that was just some ideas. It's something we're in the works, maybe in June or something. Okay.
Great idea. Rachel said yes. We're getting there, Winona.
We've had several comments here. I want to back up for a minute and just touch on some of them in the chat box. Rachel stated that SILS had CARES money available they could apply for, and there's opportunity to serve outside of their area in times of emergency. She can send out a little more info if anyone wants more. It may not be listed on their website, so that's a great opportunity for outside of our service provision. If you want, you can reach out to Rachel Allen and she'll share that information. Actually, Rachel, can you just kick it to one of us and we'll share it also, if that's okay with you? And Dottie from Colville stated that they work with their community in providing outreach through job fairs, general membership meeting, which is once a year, health fairs, and our Facebook website. Dione, go ahead.
Ruby Pal, FMVR, is having whoops, it just went really fast. They have a youth center, a youth career conference with students via Zoom outreach. That's great. We really need to stay in touch with the students. Good job.
That's right. And I want to go, Rachel had talked about outreach, the videos, and how they have to go through their PR department. And then when they do go to the PR department, they say, well, do you have money in your budget for this? So making sure that outreach is included in your policy and procedures, and making sure that in your budget, you know, that you are including the cost of this outreach, so that when you go to your PR department and say, we need help making a video, they say, you know, do you have budget? And you do. It's very important that we make sure to think about the cost of outreach.
Joy Kramer is talking about COVID-19 school districts are hosting group Zoom meetings so students can work with TBR transition counselors. Schools are still referring students. That's awesome. That's great. Anybody else want to share?
Amy was going to have Meredith share.
Sorry, Paula?
Yeah, Jamie had asked Meredith to share, and I think I cut her off, so I'm sorry.
I thought everybody forgot, so I was quiet over here. Well, for Hopi, I want to make a brief shout out to the Northwest Indian College, because if it weren't for my attending those classes, I would not have gone through with the flyers, the brochures, getting orientation PowerPoints. We would not have pushed forward with that. So thank you again for Northwest. But anyway, with Hopi, we do a lot with corn. And so with the corn, we put a lot of that into our brochures, our flyers, and our information, talking about how the growth process, the phase of how the corn is grown. And I know James is on here, so he may want to add to that, because he'd been with the program for the longest. And we just went off of that and continued to grow with that.
Well, thank you, Meredith. James, did you want to add anything? Oh, Rachel, go for it. Rachel?
Or her microphone's not working.
Okay. Lee?
This is Paula, and I think that I'm really glad that Meredith spoke up, because I've seen Hopi's planting process and how they outline it from their perspective, and it breaks down the VR process very clearly for their community members using that planting process. And Navajo does a similar process of utilizing the 4 directions, our Navajo basket as the basis for that. And, you know, starting with developing relationships with consumers. From the beginning, we have a clanship like maybe other tribes have, and establishing the relationships at the beginning, using our introductions of our clans. Again, our process is broken into 4 different areas. And it's very circular versus linear, and it does provide that, again, perspective from the your community members' viewpoint of starting with the eastern direction. We go clockwise with the south, and then the west, and then the north. And the north basically represents resilience, and our whole process just is based on those first 4 directions, and the important elements within the teachings of the Navajo basket, and the teachings of what it represents. So I just wanted to make those those comments as well. So thank you, Meredith.
Jamie was able to pull up the Hopi Vocational Rehabilitation, or somebody did. And this shows the, it would be the application process and IPE and as we move through the processes and hopefully employment.
James, where's your voice?
Yes.
He may be having trouble unmuting.
Yeah. So, and so is Lee. So, but thank you for sharing this. And it's,
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I'm surprised somebody had that up. Meredith didn't really have anything from my office. We just up and left the office and really couldn't go back. I did in last week in order to send out letters, but as far as this process goes, this is our main orientation. It goes through the whole process of eligibility, just as Paula shared. And thank you for that, Paula. And I just want to say that when I presented this to one of the elder population, they were so impressed that we used this model because it was an elderly male who stated that they really related to it because of how he was taught and planting corn through the whole process. So I know and understand that this really is a great way to reach out to people. Thank you.
orientation, as was mentioned in the beginning, orientation can be in a group. It can be in a group and individually, or just individually. And it's based on sometimes the size of the program and sometimes just things that are, already been passed down from maybe one leadership to another. But the orientation, I've witnessed where an orientation process with the invitation of the state to be there is often very, very encouraging. I know one program that they changed their orientation process and they increased their consumer base. So think about what you can do to reach out to your community and to be a good provider of information. Remember your goals: to do no harm, to respect confidentiality and respect the African consumers that are seeking the help of a neighbor's program.
Rachel had brought up or made a comment about having to go through the PR department, and they're for her they're charging extra money or something like that to work on those videos and stuff like that. And she just brought up another question or comment about maybe using some of that carryover money that was, or not. I keep saying carryover money, and I keep getting corrected for that. The potential for carryover money based on the closure of the program and the limitations on serving individuals. Maybe some of that money can be transferred over to utilizing it to create an outreach plan, to create brochures, to create some of that other money, or some of the other outreach materials, and spending that money down. And I think I would feel that's allowable. I would encourage you to reach out to your project officer before you do that with a budget, explaining the cost and how you're going to utilize that material. We can still use outreach or buy outreach material. We can't buy or spend money on trinkets, so to speak. Just being aware of that. That's a great idea on how to manage some of your carryover, or what will be carryover. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left of this webinar. Is there any other last minute hot topics that people want to throw out there. I really like the discussion we had around transition. That's interesting. The reintegration stuff and just general outreach. It's been a great discussion. The chat box is full of good information that we'll keep sharing. Okay. Since there's crickets chirping, I'll go ahead and jump back in here. We have some upcoming webinars, so please save the date. Tomorrow we have May 20th, Taking Care of Yourself, and that'll be with Mr. Lee Gashioma, Daryl Joseph, Bear Benally, and I guess I'll be part of it also, doing some stuff with them. On the 26th, we have program evaluation and checklist guidelines. Please join us there. Watch for those flyers or invitations to be coming out. And I just seen a comment in here that Paula has sent out the Navajo VR process as well to John. So we're gonna be sharing all that information with you guys for the models. And Rachel also states that some tribes are starting to use text pushes. So if we get that going, it might be a good way to connect with the youth being more tech savvy. And again, we are here. We just had a webinar about surveys and how important it is. So here we are again with me begging and pleading you, please fill out the survey. It helps us track data and continue to improve on our presentations to you and the trainings that you guys need. We'll be sending out a follow-up email, and I'm going to let Jamie talk here. This is her deal, so I'm going to quit talking.
I was just going to ask John if he could put a link to the survey in the chat box. I was trying to find it and talk at the same time, and you know that didn't work.
No.
But I just want to thank you, John. Just want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. The information that we've discussed, your ideas that you've shared, I think it's been helpful to everyone, you know, and that's what we're here for, to share information amongst ourselves, to provide information to those that are in need, and most of all to support each other. You know, it's nice to be able to have someone to talk to about things that are going on in your program. Maybe they're having the same issues in their program. I know at AverTech, I love to bounce things off of my coworkers, Wayne and Winona and Suzanne, Dr. Gassioma. So it's great to have, you know, resources and individuals to discuss issues in your program. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to thank Wayne, Suzanne, John, Winona, Paula, everyone that contributed to today's discussion. If you have any questions, we're going to do a follow-up email with information, the links to the materials that we shared today, also the link to the survey. And feel free, if you have any questions, to email us. We'll be glad to answer as best we can. Suzanne, Wayne, do you have any additional comments?
Thank you. Really appreciate your time. And take care. Be safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's kind of where I'm at too, is I appreciate your guys's appreciate you guys' participation. Thank you for joining us.
Big hugs from us to you. Yes, Amanda.
Bye, Suzanne.
Bye-bye, Amanda. Good to see you.
Thank everybody. Thanks.
You guys are wonderful. Bye, Angel.
Good to see everybody.
Paula, thank you.
Meredith, give me a call.